Hello, writers. I'm freelance fiction editor Miranda Darrow with my weekly video about writing, editing, and the writing life. This month, we're shining the spotlight on space opera. Last week, I posted a video with tips, tropes, and other considerations for space opera writing. This week's video is going to be my list of book recommendations. Space opera is where spectacle meets the soul, and there's a recent wave of novels in this subgenre that are exceptionally rich, diverse, and craft savvy. Below is my curated list of space opera and space opera adjacent novels and series that I recommend to writers, not just because they're entertaining, but because they do something instructive with the form. Let's all nerd out. Identity, empire, and who gets to be a person. If that's a theme that interests you, check out Ancillary Justice and the Imperial Radic, a series by Ann Leckie. Yes, the first book is a bit old to be a comp title, but it's still relevant because their series continues to shape the genre and there are new ones coming out. So what Leckie does brilliantly is she explores the identity through AI consciousness, collapses gender assumptions, makes empires feel both seductive and horrifying. For writers, notice how Brecht's perspective reframes everything. This is where space opera's emotional core and what it does to many fuels the galactic conflict. Another title, A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine. We have political space opera at its finest. This is a masterclass in cultural assimilation, court intrigue, linguistic identity, soft power as weaponry. Writers, study how Martine makes diplomacy feel just as tense as battle. There's barely a laser fired, and yet the stakes are existential. The Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon. Generational spaceship, rigid caste system, brutal social hierarchy. This novel leans into the social political dimension of space opera and asks uncomfortable, necessary questions about race, power, and survival. If you're world building oppressive systems, take notes. The ship's structure mirrors its societal structure. Environment reinforces inequality. Resistance grows from character interiority. Here's an older one, but still a good one, Dawn by Octavia Butler. I read this one recently. It's foundational and newly discovered by many readers. Alien contact, consent, biological ethics. Butler's work reminds us that space opera isn't just about empires, it's about what survival costs. Writers, this is how you can learn to build an alien culture that's genuinely unsettling. How about a few titles that feature found family, crew dynamics, and emotional intimacy? Sure. First up is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet and the following series by Becky Chambers. If you think space opera has to be grimdark, this series will lovingly disagree. Chambers focuses on crew relationships, cultural exchange, kindness as resistance. It's expansive in its setting, but it's intimate in its tone. For writers, ensemble casts only work if each member has a worldview that clashes or complements the others. Chambers nails this. Next, one of my family's favorites, a great choice for road trips, All Systems Red by Martha Wells, and the whole Murderbot Diaries series. This is technically lighter in scope, but it's absolutely space opera in spirit. Murderbot is our first-person POV narrator who's not human. Technically, it's a sec unit, a security robot with AI intelligence, but Murderbot, self-named, is not a bland AI voice. Murderbot is snarky, traumatized, competent, desperately avoiding feelings. The brilliance here is the high-stakes corporate exploitation meets deeply personal autonomy. Writers, watch for the internal conflict that can drive external rebellion. Another title, Machine by Elizabeth Bear. Medical space opera with ethical nuance and interspecies diplomacy. This one reminds us that not all space operas revolve around war. Compassion can be dramatic. Bureaucracy can be as intense as combat. Yes. Let's look at a few titles. Now let's look at a few titles that feature spectacle, war, and relentless escalation. A long-running series with some good offshoots started with Red Rising by Pierce Brown. It's a high-octane, emotionally volatile, revolution-driven. Brown excels at brutal pacing, escalating betrayals, operatic emotional swings. If you're writing rebellion narratives, study how Brown keeps raising the stakes without exhausting the readers. I once got a coworker hooked on this series, and she's thanked me ever since. Brandon Sanderson's Skyward is a young adult space opera with fighter pilots and alien threats, and some less threatening aliens and AI that help out our heroine on her quest. I'm a huge fan of Doomslug and Mbot. This is another great pick for our family road trips. Sanderson's strengths include clear character motivation, layered mystery, tight structural plotting. Writers, this is how you can balance large-scale conflict with protagonist-specific arcs. Seven Eves by Neil Stephenson. It's epic, sweeping, and catastrophic. When I think of generational spaceships, I used to think of highly organized lifeboat selection processes like we would do at corporate retreats. That was until I read Seven Eves, and now I think that this story's chaotic approach to staffing the ship is probably more realistic. Stephenson handles hard science survival, generational consequences, the long view of humanity. This is a scale. Let's talk about a few space opera titles that feature. If you want scale, let's talk about a few space opera titles that feature isolation, survival, logical depth. Let's start with Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. One man, one mission, and one delightful alien. Weir proves hard science can coexist with emotional warmth. Problem solving can create narrative tension. Optimism works in space opera. Also, Rocky. Yes. Next up, Beacon 23 by Hugh Howey. Isolation in deep space. Beacon 23 reminds us that a single location can still feel vast. This is set on like a lighthouse beacon with a single person living on it. So there's psychological unraveling as a powerful engine. There's a minimal cast, but that does not mean there's minimal stakes. Next up, Aurora by Kim Stanley Robinson. This is a generational ship with realism and environmental and ecological focus. This is a space opera interrogating itself. What if the dream of colonization isn't romantic? Writers can study this for tension coming from scientific limits, not just villainy. And finally, Providence by Max Barry. Military sci-fi meets media manipulation. Barry plays with narrative reliability, public perception, the myth of heroism, and it's a sharp reminder that in space opera, propaganda can be as dangerous as plasma cannons. Why these books matter for writers. This list isn't random. Collectively, these novels demonstrate that modern space opera is politically aware, emotionally complex, diverse in voice and perspective, and flexible in tone, from hopeful to brutal. They're deeply character-driven. Gone are the days when space opera meant generic empires versus rebels. Today's space operas ask, who defines humanity? Who gets power? What does survival cost? What does belonging mean across light years? If you're writing space opera, here's a checklist. Does your protagonist have a deeply personal stake in the galactic conflict? Is your world building reinforcing your theme? Are your political systems pressuring character choice? Does your technology create moral consequences? Is your ensemble cast ideologically diverse? If yes, you're in the right orbit. If not, there's work to do, and this reading list will help you see how the pros do it. Space operas lets us think big, but the best of it reminds us that in galaxy-spanning war, there's still a person making a choice, and that choice and that person is the story. Be sure to like and subscribe. This is freelance fiction editor Miranda Darrow wishing you happy writing.